And we are recording. Great. So welcome everybody to our Monday night team vaccination training call. And it is an absolute pleasure to have my friend, and sure a lot of your friends, friend as well, Tracy Lalonde. Now, Tracy was one of our speakers at our 2021 Vox Life Summit, our first ever summit. And she did an absolutely wonderful job, as did all the other speakers. But with what's going on, with corporate asking for video testimonials, and they sent out a form and so on. And Kevin Dugay just came off a UK call last Wednesday talking about the importance of telling your story, the importance of learning how to do the demo properly, and so on. And so I thought it might be apropos because Tracy did such an eloquent job of the art of telling your story. Now, just a little bit of background about Tracy. Tracy is not a hugger maybe, but she loves to love. She loves to absolutely love. In fact, among many things she loves words and quotes. And one of her favorite life thoughts is, learn to love as you are loved, and you will change the world. That is by Steve Demme. Did I pronounce that right?
Demme, but yeah, Demme.
Steve Demme, yeah. So Tracy and her husband have been married for 26 years, and they live in the Niagara region and in Canada here. And she met her husband, and they settled in the Niagara area after she graduated with her degree in linguistics in English literature with a business education in teaching English as a second language. And beginning with these studies, she has become increasingly fascinated with our amazing brains and how our brains are just so mind-blowing, shall we say. Incredible stuff. They have 3 young adult children who Tracy homeschooled all the way through high school. In her homeschooling days, Tracy was active within this community, and especially their history, fine arts, and drama program. And her heart has always been in seeing young hearts and minds grow in understanding and confidence. And through those 20 years, Tracy was with a nutritional wellness company, but for many reasons that door closed. Although now describing herself as a recovered skeptic in regard to our neurotechnology, Tracy was drawn to Vox Life because it offered something in terms of wellness that was simple and safe, effective, and very affordable. That allowed her to meet people at their point of need. Before she was personally aware of the benefits her body was experiencing from this technology, it was the science and the authenticity of the culture of leadership that captured her skeptical heart. And that's all thanks to everybody on this call. We've all created this amazing culture. Tracy is passionate about building community and creating a safe space for people to uncover their authentic voice so they can tell their true stories. And as a writer and reader, she loves a good story herself. So without further ado, it is my good pleasure to welcome our trainer for Team Vaccination tonight and my friend, Tracy Lalonde. Take it away, Tracy.
Thanks, Terry. Oh my goodness, you guys got the long version of the intro. I think he chatted to Krista, but thank you for that. And yeah, I'm really thankful to be here. And I am the culture of this community, like he mentioned, and I want to move into story, but part of my own story is that I was 3 years with this technology with really recognizing the changes in hindsight. It was a 3-year point where those aha moments went. And there were so many pieces about the culture. And so I think that it's really important for every single one of us to recognize that we each have our own stories to bring to the table. We don't all have that. There's certainly, well, even in my own story, it was so early, 2016, that I was very skeptical, and the friend doing the stability testing on me was so cautious that it wasn't a wow moment for me. But we all have our own stories. And if we stay the course, we can listen to that and grow from that. But I was also thinking in this busy life, this culture, I have been thinking about Jen Moyer a lot lately, because she said early on that this Vox Life fits in the pockets of your life. And I've said recently, I think I need bigger pockets because I'm coming from the end of I work 5 days, 12 days, 12 hours a day. Like I've got long stretches, but you know what? The thing I want to say is whatever your story is looking at, whatever your life is looking at right now, This is a story still worth sharing. And so whatever your pockets look like, just keep it. Terry said all along, keep your toe in the water. And that's been part of that 3-year journey for me. So part of that is to just apologize because I might go to my notes because that's my days. But so, and I also have a little teaser from the end. I have a friend, Darlene, who just shared an incredibly entertaining little Vox, a very different twist on a Vox story on our team call on Saturday. So that's going to whet your appetite. So I am an educator by background, so I do always encourage you to grab your pen, because even if you take notes on a laptop, your brain thinks with a pen in hand. So if you heard my summit, I had you write them down. I'm not going to do that to you tonight. Some of this will draw on it, but again, just know this thing on a piece of paper will do more than a keypad ever does neurologically. Okay, it's fascinating what the brain does. So I want to touch, there's so many things that I could share about storytelling. And I love that. I want to come back and see Kevin's training on that, because there's so many angles we could take. But when Terry posted, he said, I hope you don't mind whatever name I gave the talk. And I thought it was actually really appropriate, because he called it the art of storytelling. And that's actually the piece of it that I want to lean into tonight is, and I'll come into that, but it's the art that is storytelling. So there are three key things, because if you know me, I think in 3 key takeaways. So I have 3 key thoughts that I want to touch on tonight. If I go quickly, you can wave, because I can do that when I've got a lot of information. And if you want to chat about anything afterwards, I'm happy to do that too. So the first point I really want to touch on in terms of storytelling, because these are foundational pieces, okay, is that storytelling is about connecting. It is primarily about connecting with another person or the person you're sharing with. And as humans, we are neurologically wired for story. Okay, so you will be sharing information in your stories, but your purpose in learning to craft a story is connection. And I will say, I'm just seeing Kevin look up here. Stories are about art and heart. And that's one of the reasons we love to listen to Kevin share his stories, because he comes with so much heart. He's got a natural born connection. Some of us journey with that a little bit more. But the fact is that regardless, human beings are natural born storytellers. And just think about any children that you have in your life. Like, kids have no problem telling a story, and they're not worried. This is one of the big things of it. They're not worried about doing it right. And that's part of what happens to us. We unlearn how to tell stories, and we get caught in doing it right. And if we can't do it right, we don't do it at all. And so one of the things that you can do in terms of just becoming comfortable with storytelling is letting yourself have fun with it. Read some children's books, read them to children. Like, you have kids in your life now, kids, when they tell a story, if you talk to my 3-year-old great niece, it's over here from fairies to unicorns to drag, like it's all over the place, right? So storytelling is art and science. It is skill, but the place we wanted to lean into is some of that, knowing that you have a story and that it doesn't have to be done perfectly, and that we unlearn storytelling. And so when you're telling a story, you want to keep it simple. And we'll touch on this a bit later, but we get complicated. We get bogged down in our stories. But from way back from philosophers all the way through, storytelling is really simple. Storytelling is at its core a beginning, a middle, and an end. When we talk about our Vox life story, I'm sure you've heard trainings. What was my life like before Vox, when I encountered Vox, and now are looking forward in Vox. But it's beginning, middle, and end. As a teacher, I always said, even silly things are sticky. So I talk about the Humpty Dumpty principle. So Humpty Dumpty, you all know the nursery rhyme. It's the essence of that idea, because beginning, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Middle, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. End, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. So part of when you're looking at your stories, whether you're figuring it out or whether you have it all put together, pull it down to simplicity. Break your story into beginning, middle, and end, and keep it true to you. People connect with real, unpolished, vulnerable. And one of the best pieces that I think I can offer, because wherever you're at, you already have a story to share. I'm kind of jumping ahead, but you have a story to share. And one of the things that you can use in your story can even be your objections. So I have said that Jay has said early on the reason they don't have socks is it doesn't make a big lifestyle change. I thought I was barefoot. I'm like, yeah, it does, right? And so an early part of my story was just even to name my own objections, right? Because you're looking to connect with people. So my story had a whole lot of skepticism and objections to it. So my earliest stories were that I was and it's what my son called me, a barefooted, hippie-hearted mama that was selling mind-altering socks. And I would say, and I was asking, how could this work? Why would I pay good money for socks? And why on earth would I even wear socks? Right? So it doesn't matter how long you've been with the company, whether you feel like you've had those wow moments, maybe your objections, the reality of facing your objections are a part of your story. And as you share your story, just again, this is back to the connection, the idea that storytelling is primarily about connection. And again, there's many things we could say in here, but one thing to do is consider your audience. You have many stories, but you can have one story that can be shared to completely different audiences. And I'm going to segue just for a minute because I find this analogy really helpful. One of my favorite courses was the history of the English language. And the English language comes from all different places. It had its many source words. So around 1066, the French came in, English changed, and they brought great big words. The nobility brought in big words. So if you were in a theater and flames started to come out, would you yell conflagration or would you yell fire? Right? We yell fire. That's Anglo-Saxon. So that's deepest to our English language heart. Both fire and conflagration mean the same thing, but you have to consider who you're speaking to. So I find it helpful. So we know most of the time when we're talking about our technology, we're using a fire conversation. We trigger a response that affects the body and we feel the difference. That's fire. Conflagration is our complex neurological science. And the best way I've summarized that is Krista Taylor, who's a math inclination, like I'm history science, those history arts. She looked at some of the mathematical formulas that Jay used in his process. And she said, I didn't even recognize some of those symbols, right? And so that's the conflagration. But you can work your story because stories connect regardless. So you can connect, just consider who your audience is. So storytelling is primarily about connection, and as a human, you're neurologically wired for story. But as I've mentioned, it's both art and science. And so when it comes to art, like I mentioned in terms of Kevin or so many other people, when you think art, think heart. And it's the whole thing again, is that you already have a story. It's your point of connection, and whether you've been with Vox 4 years or 4 days. So the question that comes up is, what if I don't know what my story is? And this is where the brain becomes incredibly fascinating without all that goes into it, but the brain hates unanswered questions. So one of the best ways you can begin to explore what your story is to start asking your brain questions. If you're looking specifically at your Vox story, just put up cue cards around your house. Ask yourself the questions: why did I join Vox Life? What makes Vox Life unique? What story can I share that will bring hope to others? And don't expect your brain to answer right away, because that's not how the brain works. It likes to chew on it, think on it, wondering on it. But put those up and be ready to record it when the answer comes, because it can come anytime. Like phones are great for that now, like grab it and record it, but put the questions around in your world. And again, whether you're as visual as I am or not, putting a Post-it note or a cue card in your bathroom when you brush your teeth. Why did I join Vox Life? What makes Vox Life unique is, I think, probably one of the most valuable ones when we were doing the story writing contest. And if you are inclined to dive a little deeper, chat to me sometime about morning writings, because there are all kinds of ways that you can tap in to what your subconscious knows to be true when you pick up a pen and you just write. So if you want to hear about morning writings, you can just chat with me about that. But know also that the story you share might not even be your own story initially, even though you have those stories, whether it's objections or otherwise. But find a story that's meaningful to you. So in those 3 years, I didn't have a wow story myself that I felt I could share. I was in a journey, but I was sharing the stories of Cassie and Andrea and April and Mark and Susan. So there are stories that you can come into. So art, think heart when it comes to storytelling. And part of art, part of the heart of storytelling is, again, that connection with the person. See the person, watch the person. And this probably leads into the science piece, is if you are connecting with a person in storytelling, then their eyes are not glazing over because you are dumping information on them. So connection means that you are connecting to that person. And so there's a lot, that's where the science of storytelling comes in. So art is much more of a interior figuring out kind of woo kind of stuff. Good news is that the science part of storytelling is skill sets. They're learnable, actionable steps. You can go online, you can be finding all kinds of tools. But of all the ones I could offer, one of the biggest, I have two that I'll share tonight, but one of the biggest is edit, 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 because we just drown people in information. One of my favorite quotes is, a story is real life with the boring bits left out. And so keep it simple. And so one of the things we need to remember too is that we are usually more fascinated with all the details of our story than other people are. That's just human nature. We like to talk about ourselves. The most fascinating people are the ones who you come out of a conversation and they've maybe not even said anything. You've ended up allowing them to talk about themselves. So consider the simplicity, and also always keep in mind, because if you are looking to connect, you are always keeping the other person in mind, keeping in mind your story, and always have in the back of your mind, because your brain hates an unanswered question, how can my story connect with this person to help with them or to help them in need? Because the reality is we all have stories that have little bits of stories, and they don't need all the stories. People don't need to know. Some people don't need to know about the alignment in my spine. That was like, well, seriously, and why it was significant that it was not a Vox, practitioner that was telling me that. That is a whole other story. But some people don't need to know that connection to my sister, because it was a very heart level. It was a very heart level, meaningful piece to me when I was skeptical, because of my own backstory. But it's not one I often share because it's not that connection point. So how can my story, what piece of my story can help a person? And if you've written out your story, just read it out again, just put edit, edit, edit. And one of the best practical tools, and I don't know if Candy made it onto the call tonight, but Candy often says this is one of her favorite ones. She chats about this storytelling writing principle. So this one's for you, Candy, if you're watching the recording too, is this question, another question. Are there carrots in my cookie jar? So I actually will wait while you write that one down if you've got a pen there. So it is such a helpful tool, and it sounds silly, but silly sticks. Are there carrots in my cookie jar? So carrots are good and cookies are good, but carrots don't belong in a cookie jar. Okay, so you may have amazing stories to share. You may not be hunting for your story. You may have so many stories that's why people's eyes are glazing over, because you're just giving them so much. So take a step back and think, what is carrot and what is cookie? Because what I find for many people is if they stop, they may have one story they're trying to tell, but it's actually 5. Or for example, right? Break it down into those smaller pieces. And when I was writing here today, I thought, sorry if this is just my sense of humor, but I thought, okay, carrots are good, but you can make my mother-in-law would make glazed carrots. I thought, so if you want to think of carrots in the cookie jar with glazed carrots and the glazed look in their eye, okay, so it's the carrots are still good. It's just, what do you share when? Because it's how do you connect with your audience, right? And so that the first really practical science piece of storytelling that I shared there was edit. Those are a couple of ways to edit, just kind of keep it simple, but also other carrots in my cookie jar. The other one you're familiar with, maybe from writing, marketing, all kinds of places, is a literary device that's moved into marketing called a hook. And a hook, quite simply, opens a story and catches the reader's attention or the listener's attention. Because we live in a world that, right, if you haven't caught attention, like that. There's one speaker I really appreciated. She helped authors present to publishers, and they actually said in that, like, it was like 12 seconds. You had to have them in like 20 seconds or less. You've got to have them. And so that's where hooks are really useful in your storytelling. And you can always work backward from your story to create a hook. So some examples of a hook, and I'm just going to skim these, but you can start with the description. The idea of that is to give them a feeling of where you are in a time and place. You could start with a fact or statistic, which actually really works well for what we have, right? Because we have the science. So one of the earliest stories that I shared was a 31% increase in balance and stability. My mother was 86, legally blind, and hiking around her hometown when I was introduced to this technology, and I was skeptical, but I thought if it does half of what they say, it's worth a pair of socks for Christmas, right? So you can take a statistic and put it into a story piece, a strong statement, a quotation, but then one of the simplest, and again, all of these are also storytelling skills. It's such a skill set now that you can find a lot of these online. But one of the simplest is just to ask a question, put a question right at the beginning. And so like one of them, like if I said this, I'll read this because it'll be quicker. I want to honor the time there, but why is my foot hitting the brake? I'd been wearing the HPT for 3 years without the wows that many people experience. I had just started wearing the sleeve, and I had just started my hour-long commute to work when this thought flashed through my brain, followed in quick succession by deer. And the deer jumped off the road, but it was standing right in the middle of the road, but I hadn't seen it. My first thought was, why is my foot hitting the brake? And I saw the deer. The deer jumps off. My next thought was, isn't it beautiful? And then a little further down, it was, that could have been really bad. Like it was that far down that I had just reacted, right? Reaction time of the sleeve. And then I was to the corner before I realized I didn't have all of that rush that came in with that. And so I said, the sleeves helped me in many ways. And to date, it saved the life of 3 deer. So, but you can start with a question, right? Start with a question. And especially on social media, we have so many valuable stories, but it's just a lot of information sometimes. So go down into the story and can you take a phrase, a statement? I had one woman say, this thing does not exist. Like you could put that at the top, just something, whatever it is that catches the person's attention. And yeah, so storytelling is primarily about connection and that we are wired for stories. It's both art and science. And then the last thing is just really back to a heart thing. Just the reminder that someone needs to hear your story. So there are people out there waiting, and people maybe that you don't even know yet that are waiting to hear your story. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and it's better if it isn't perfect. Well, maybe like tonight's call, but let it be real and let it be authentic. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing your story, find a story that is meaningful to you. Talk to that person, ask if you can share that story. Because one of the things that I think is, when just kind of coming full circle back to the idea of culture that we need to remember and recognize, is that all of our stories are part of your story, right? So all of these stories are a part of ours, but no one else has your voice. So you have some, even if you're telling if Terry and Deb and Paul and Joanne all told the same story, there would be something different that came through them in the way they told it, in the way they heard it, in who they connected with. You're connecting with different people. So all of our stories are all of our stories, and each of us are placed for such a time as this. So that's a bit of a drinking effect, like a water hose through stories. Deb is, again, one of the best encouragers. I love your thumbs up. You're always amazing, Deb. So thank you for the pockets of my life. So I want to wrap up. And we're going to wrap up with Darlene's fun story. And then I can do one more. I have Cassie's, my customer story, I can read at the end, but you decide from there, Terry. But I do want you to hear a bedtime story from my beautiful Darlene, who just recently, can we unmute Darlene, Terry? Who just recently reached director, just last business period too. So it was good timing. Congrats, Darlene.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm getting ready. Everybody ready? You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay, children, we're going to have a story. So settle in, get cozy. This is a story of Vax and the tramp. Once upon a time, there was a patch named Vax. After almost a year of settling in on Darlene's ribcage, Vax was moved to her upper arm. While he tolerated the new place for a good 36 hours, this just didn't feel right for Vax. So when nightfall came and Darlene was about to change into her clothes for bed, Vax saw his chance. This, he thought, will be my opportunity to run away and find a nicer place to live. So, as Darlene pulled off her t-shirt, Vax wiggled as hard as he could, and he released himself from Darlene's arm. It was surprisingly easier than he thought. He was free at last. He tumbled and rolled, flipped and flew. Oh, what a feeling! And Darlene was none the wiser. As she pulled on her pajama top, Vax finally landed. Alas, he had found his new home. But Vax knew eventually Darlene would figure it out. She would realize that he was gone. Vax could already feel her searching for him. So he stayed quiet, very quiet and very still. It was easy because this new place was warm and cozy, safe and dark. I like it here, he said to himself. Soon Vax fell asleep. He knew he wouldn't stay, Soon Vax felt himself drifting off to sleep. He could not stay awake any longer. Darlene must be sleeping with my friend Rem tonight, he thought. Tramp. Vax had one of the best sleeps he had ever had. When he awoke, Darlene had figured out exactly where he was. He knew it was only a few more hours to enjoy here. So he decided to savor every moment he had left as he continued to slumber on Darlene's lumbar. The end.
And Darlene, so one of the things like I wanted to share about story, and I think, and if I can just end with this, and because I know all the rest was really like fire hose and information, but what I really want us to know, and Darlene, you're amazing. Thank you for being brave enough to share your Vax and the Tramp. She's like,
I just wrote it in there.
I said,
I just wrote in there. But Tracy, it is a true story. They must know that. It's a true story.
Yeah.
The patch went from my arm to my back.
And I think why I wanted to share this when Terry had asked, and then she shared this, is that I think what it reinforced for me in terms of what we're saying about story is that we all have such unique stories. And I love, and I say with my team, Kevin says over and over, we are a living experiment. We are a living experiment. This technology is new. And I think it's really, really important to not get caught up in the, oh, it's not perfect, like even our stories. Oh, it's not sticking in that spot. She's like, well, maybe it needs to sit on my lumbar, right? And I think it's just really important to not get caught up. We're all unique. And I've said to my people from the very beginning, don't ask me to explain why this was, but when I started wearing patches, they stuck on the right side of my body and they fell off the left side of my body. Does that make sense? No. But it was exactly what it was. And so regardless of what the piece is, each story is unique, but I would encourage you, and I guess this is probably why I want to end there, is I want to encourage you when you're sharing your stories, take a step back, like don't get bogged down in the heavies of it and try to really present it to the people you're sharing with. Like, don't put negative expectation onto people. We are all exploring, and I just really appreciated chatting with Terry about this again recently. Just really lean into the experimentation. Find out where it's working for you. Like I had my own journey with some of that. Where does the sleeve work? How often do I want to wear it? We get really stuck in the right and wrong, and I think that we just need to loosen up a little bit and have fun. And I think that it's really important to remember that whether it's in telling our story or in sharing this, because if we are wired tight, then we will give wired tight to other people. If we are willing to be open-handed and experimenting and exploring and willing to learn and take in information, then I think that that's really significant. So I just really wanted to thank Darlene to wrap up our night with the story of
My
Vax and the
pleasure.
Tramp and little Rem Patch that was sleeping around. So.
I love that line, tramp. That's a game stopper right there. But fantastic, Tracy. It's really amazing to me that, you know, one of the things you said that really caught my attention is that we're all part of the story. We're all part of this story because we're all part of this journey of sharing. And it's amazing how many times I've listened to people's stories, and there's always a little snippet in there that I can relate to, or that happened to me, or something that was very similar to something I experienced or whatever. And so, although our stories are unique, there's a lot of similarities, because it's kind of like, before I was introduced to this technology, I was dealing with this, thus, and so. And then it was basically introduced. I tried it. Was I skeptical? Probably, yes, whatever. But since wearing it, now I don't deal with this, thus, and so. And the neat thing about it is I've heard different people tell their stories, and their stories evolve along with the technology and the cumulative value of the technology. And there's people that, you know, are you know, adding to their story, because there's more things happening as they go along. So the story, again, does not have to be written in stone, like our journeys. It's okay to let it evolve. But authenticity is huge. And speaking from the heart, and being authentic in your story, and not being afraid of being vulnerable, and in your story, and being vulnerable in your story is very powerful at times. And, you know, if we shed a tear, blessings, because, you know, as Duke said, we should have got a share in Kleenex. Everybody, when they join, should have got a share in Kleenex, because all of us before that have been on this call, you know, have had our thoughts and our memories roll down our cheeks, right? And so, how blessed are we?
Oh, that's a good line. I'm so sorry, but the writer in me just said, sorry, our thoughts and our memories roll down our cheeks. That's just really good, Terry. And it is the humanity of that. Sorry.
Well, it's true. I mean, we've all done that. But the support that we give each other, the support that, you know, we're not judging people on their story. And as you said, your story doesn't have to be perfect. Your story just has to be yours. It just has to be authentic. It has to be real, because remember that thing in our brain called the amygdala, where we can tell whether the story is authentic or not. That's that little, you know, BS detector in our brain that we have. And so authenticity in our story is important. But, you know, like we said, don't try and make it perfect. Just be you. Just be you. And I think sometimes those stories that we've had on Real People, Real Results, that Krista and Dukes host every other Monday, man, there's been some powerful, powerful stories where you look at the screen, and when you see, you know, 20 or 30 people on the screen, and people are putting their head down, or all of a sudden they're, you know, going to their image instead of their live video, you know that they're either blowing their nose or wiping their eyes or doing whatever. And we've all been there. And that's what's so powerful about stories, because they are real, and they bring out that emotion in all of us. And so your story is so important. It's important to tell it. And it's okay to let it evolve. And so, you know, the other thing, carrots in the cookie jar, love it. That's such an awesome thing, because as you said, we sometimes get carried away and are trying to tell 3, 4, 5 stories in one. And, you know, we gotta just pull back a bit and step back and edit before we're prepared to tell it in an authentic way. So if anybody has any questions for Tracy, please feel like you can unmute yourself and say hello, and ask Tracy any questions on storytelling. We'd love to hear from you. I know there's somebody out there that has a question or has something to add tonight.
Better hope my brain's wide awake enough. I didn't know that part was an option.
Yeah. And
Diane
Tracy, this
Sinclair.
is great. I've got notes, like 4 or 5 pages worth of notes, and I just love both you and our little tramp story. Thanks,
Sorry, she
Darlene.
did say story, Darlene.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did, Darlene. I said story. And I think part of what we need to remember is that people are being inundated. They're being thrown information right and left. And when you can create something like Darlene's story or authentically your own or someone else's that has a lightness to it, but as Terry said, someone can just grab that little tidbit and want more because they can relate to it. It's amazing. I heard a statement on a seminar I was on in this weekend. It was great. The women, I don't know if anybody else was there, but the women, the most powerful women in network marketing, and it was 3 days of just amazing information. And at 77, I don't remember always everything that I've learned, but one statement that stuck with me is, I can give you a recipe and I can teach you to cook, but I can't make you hungry. And so if you can find out what someone is hungry about and then give them the recipe to fill that hunger, I think
100%.
that will make a difference.
Because our goal, if I may, and this is exactly what you're saying, our goal is to meet people at their point of need.
Right.
And that's where we need to know, and this is bigger than this story is, but we need to know our story. We need to be comfortable with our story. We can write it out, read it to ourselves, whatever, but we need to know our story so much so we can pull and piece, because if we practice it, if we know it, if we're familiar with the phrases that fall off our tongue, right, then that allows us in the encounters to be listening and watching to the other person. So like you said, then we can find out what recipe they need, right? Then we can be listening to what part we offer them, right?
Yeah.
And not just give them everything, but give them what's going to be what they want.
Yeah. Or as I always say, we don't need to show up and throw up, gang. Let's kind of define what we're doing. As you said, edit.
Yeah, Pat Grass made a great point here in the chat group in the comments. With storytelling, sometimes less is more, too, right? So, I mean, we've heard those stories that go on, and it's almost like a country ballad. That my dog died, cat got bitten, the horse broke through the fence. We really
stomped on the grave.
Yeah,
knocked down. Yeah.
Storytelling is keeping it on point to a degree. I would suggest, Tracy, wouldn't you as well?
Oh yeah, and can I make an analogy there? I heard a speaker one time who was doing a psychology degree, or he'd done his PhD, and he was referencing, not storytelling specifically, he was referencing pharmaceuticals. And do you remember when there was a season when the commercials that would come would have like this rolling, you can have this and this and this and this and this, like it would list all the symptoms. It presented itself as being full disclosure, but on a psychological and neurological level, what happens if you tell one thing, they remember. If you tell two, they remember. If you tell three or more, they forget even the first one. So that's one thing about those commercials, but the same is true in our stories. If we tell 10 pieces of our story, they're going to forget it, but you'll walk away with the cookies in the cookie jar, which is like one piece more than all the other pieces that follow with it, right? So it is those anchoring points, those touch-in points. So absolutely.
Yeah, and the other piece that I got from this thing was to speak to inspire, not to impress. And I think that with some of us, we try to impress everyone with all of our knowledge instead of inspiring them to want to learn more or to try what we have to offer. And I know I've been guilty of that.
Well, I think the other thing too is we want to be, when you want to make somebody interested you don't necessarily want to be interesting. You want to make somebody be interested in
Exactly.
what you have to offer by telling your story and your personal experience. But it doesn't have to be a 25 chapter story to begin with. And I think
No, not War and Peace, Terry. Not War and Peace.
no, exactly. And I think I think there's a time and a place for a lengthy story, but I think in this case, as our training is tonight, is that we have to be on point with our story, and it has to be clear and concise. And I've always been taught that you have to do your story in under 2 minutes, and it's that sort of before I was introduced, I was dealing with this. Got introduced, tried it. Now I don't deal with this anymore. So it's kind of condensing that into a short form story. It's almost like bullet pointing it to a degree, but give enough there that I think that, as Tracy said, that you're giving enough there that somebody can be interested without opening up the whole enchilada, where they get to the point and say, and it's like, enough already. I get it, because we can oversell it too. You get somebody with their pen in the hand ready to sign, and you're still trying to sell them. And your story's got to be concise, real, and authentic. So I think it was fantastic, and you always have such great points, Tracy, to take away. And I know that driving home from my fishing lodge, I had a lovely conversation with you for a couple hours on the phone there, and I just always learn so much when I talk to you about how we work together, how all of us work together. Nobody knows it all. We're all here to work together and to learn from each other and to help each other on this journey, of helping others. And
Right.
we're winning, even though we're in a probably the worst time of our lives as far as this world is concerned, as far as commerce, as far as being able to do your job at the best possible percentage of success. We're probably at the worst, I would say, that I can ever remember, especially here in Canada. I mean, in Ontario, we got to be the only place in the whole world that you can't golf. Like, seriously. So, and I'm an avid golfer, so that really is a sore spot for me. But thank goodness I can deal with it. I've had bad thoughts, but I quash them pretty quick when it comes to our government officials here. But seriously, we're all helping each other. We're all journeying together, and we're all sticking together in this, even though it's tough times. It's tough times to get outside our doors. It's tough times to get out and share this. But none of us have given up. So to all those that are on this call tonight to listen to the amazing Tracy Lalonde tell her wisdom and share her knowledge with us tonight, bravo to you for getting on. Please make sure that your teammates, that they're aware of this recording. I'll get it up as quickly as possible, and it'll be in the guides tab on there. And you're all welcome on Wednesday at 3:30 if you can make it, at 3:30 Eastern. We have our UK friends, our UK partners, doing a training with regards to our technology and cricket, believe it or not, cricket. So Dukes is going to be on the call because he lives right by or he knows in Toronto where there's an actual cricket, a cricket park. Usually when I see crickets, I stomp on them, but yeah, it was a game, but very popular game across the pond. And so it'll be interesting. Stuart Holcroft and John Mooney do a great job at connecting us with people that are using our technology over there. So I invite everybody to jump on that call as well. Next Monday, for notes of interest, will be the Ask the Doc call and Real People, Real Results. So if you have questions, please send your questions to my email at tsainamond, tsainamond1@gmail.com, and or Angela Corns at Angela at Brain for Balance, so BRAIN 4 balance.com, brainforbalance.com, and we will certainly do our best to get your questions answered. But it's always a pleasure to have Dr. Mark on the call. He's always an inspiration for all of us, and I'm grateful that we can put those calls together. So once again, on behalf of the field, I'd like to thank Tracy again for.
Hey, Tracy, thank you.
This was sort of short notice too, because when I was driving home from the fishing lodge, I said, "Hey, Trace, by the way, we're doing storytelling, and you're the resident expert at this. So would you?" And she very graciously accepted to train the field, and we're all grateful that she did. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Enjoy the rest of your week, and stay in tune with our Team Vaccination. Please add content to the page. Let's get good at telling our stories, and let's continue in the pursuit of changing people's lives for the better with this amazing.
Yeah. Hey, Terry, just one thing. Make sure to tell your associates to look for the email from the company. I posted it in here. I didn't see it. I never go up into the promotions thing in my Gmail account.
Mhm.
And somehow the emails from the company regarding this thing about their testimonials and being in there got hidden, and I stumbled on it accidentally today.
Okay. Yeah.
And
So
it's due tomorrow. So
yeah, this was a request from the company to put together your testimonial,
Right.
either in writing and a video, and they sent a form out as well that you
Yeah.
can fill out as well. So as Diane said, check in your in Gmail. There's like 3 tabs. There's your regular, your promotions, and whatever. So make sure you just check all 3 tabs, because sometimes
Right.
it comes to your regular email and sometimes it comes under promotions. So just be sure to check. And if you feel like submitting this will be something that they may use on an infomercial, that you may be able to tell your story on an infomercial for Vox with a landing page to your site. So anyways, yeah, great point, Diane, and great reminder to everybody. And again, thanks, Tracy, and look forward to seeing you all on the next call. And have a blessed week, everyone, and continue to share, because we care. Bye for now.
Everyone.
Thanks again, Tracy. You were great.
Thanks, Diane. You're great encouragement, and I love your lilacs.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I hope that you can see them again soon.
Well, you
Like
know,
warm weather.
Yeah, they haven't blossomed in 2 years because we've had freezes. And
Oh,
this is the first year that they've blossomed in 2 years. And I want to be around them, even if I'm in the house.
no, totally understand. I can't,
Yeah.
you won't be able to see it, but let me see. Oh, mine's my tree. I have a tree that got transplanted from the farm I grew up on that it's just opened up, and it's a sugar maple. And it's got a
Oh,
whole story to it too, but I came home from work tonight and it's just in full leaf and the sun coming down. So yeah, I love it when it
oh,
turns green.
nice,
Yeah.
nice.
All right,
Yeah.
night, Diane.
Yeah.